Gangubai has been walking a tough path for the past 2 years. Her fields are empty and barren when they should be lush and green. No rain means there's no harvest this season.
My family is in debt because we can't pay off our loans and the government never gives us the water we need for our fields. We're dependent on the rains for our water.
This is Satara, a remote area in Maharashtra state which is facing its worst drought since 1972. Every day the women set out together to search for water. They walk for miles and finally get a potful each.
I don't ever remember seeing a tap in this village. Even at my age, I have to walk at least 3 kilometers every day just to get water.
Satara has always been a drought-prone region, but this time the situation is worse because the monsoon rains have also failed. That's dried up the rivers and emptied the wells, the only source of water here. What's more shocking is that despite this situation, the government hasn't provided people with a regular supply of drinking water for the past 50 years. The government says it's supplying water through this network of canals. But it's a different story when we go to see it ourselves. This rain harvesting well is one of those projects that in theory promises water to 40 different villages around this area. But farmers that we've been speaking to tell us that they haven't received any of it. We ourselves have looked inside and there's hardly anything in there. To top it all off, this government project has been going on since the past 20 years. Al Jazeera contacted the Ministry of Agriculture to comment on the story, but they refused to talk to us. So where the government has failed, relief agencies are stepping in. Daily water tankers at camps like these are bringing much needed help. Most people here are water refugees who fled drought.
So the government, one, has to deliver in an excellent way as far as drinking water is concerned. If they create any projects, those projects has to be done in a qualitative way. That is one. Second is that if the water is there, people are going to stay here. If the water is there, employment is going to generate here. So these are the things government should keep it in the priority in their agenda.
With each passing day, the situation is getting more desperate. And what people here are fearing is that the help they need may never come their way. Prerna Suri, Al Jazeera, Satara.
Vidarbha is a region in crisis. The months of May and June are hot and dry, and a time of despair for cotton growers. Most are now contemplating their yearly gamble on the coming monsoon, but for some, the prospect of going further into debt is too much. On average, in this area alone, a farmer commits suicide every 8 hours, a figure that spikes at this time of year. Ramdas Kishan Dale took his own life on the 1st of May. He was the sole breadwinner for his wife, 3 children and elderly parents.
He was a good son. He looked after us. He looked after the family. He was a quiet person and shouldered the burden of the entire family.
That burden included loans totalling $4,000, a crippling amount for a subsistence farmer.
He spoke about his 200,000 rupee debt to me all the time. He'd say that in a few years we have to get our daughter married. He worried about how we'd manage. He was always tense, but he didn't tell me from where he'd borrowed money.
Some of the money came from banks, some from moneylenders charging exorbitant rates. He had no way of repaying his debts, nor does the family he's left behind.
The seeds are expensive. The fertiliser's expensive. I won't be able to pay for them. I don't have anything to spend on my kids' education or the farm. If the government provides some help, then I can consider managing the farm. The whole burden is on me.
The reasons why so many farmers suicide are complex, but underlying most is debt caused by illness, dowry, unemployment or alcoholism, combined with a wider breakdown of rural economies. More than 90% of farms here are rain dependent, but this small patch of irrigated land provides a glimpse of life as it was just a decade ago. Market gardens and multi-cropping were the norm. Farmers would grow what could be eaten and sold locally, as well as cash crops like cotton. But in recent years, the government encouraged monoculture and a move towards genetically modified cotton. It's high risk and high reward, and GM cotton is now the predominant crop.
Cotton is the only cash crop. And if you look at the cultivation area, around more than 80% area is covered under cotton. But after 2005, having allowed these multinational companies to take over in seed, what happened that the cost of the cultivation has been jumped, but the cost of the cotton prices which the produce comes have collapsed. So that's the only reason where the farmers suffered huge losses, and the debt has created a distress, and distress are killing the farmers.
Outside Ramdas Kishan Dale's house, I speak to a group of farmers devastated by their community's loss.
We can support with each others, with socially also, but can't support them economically. Economic problem is the main problem, sir. We support him only emotionally.
Some voice their anger at the government, others their own thoughts of suicide. Homraj Vital Bakondi and his daughter have anemia. Monthly blood transfusions and years of poor returns have left him with debts of $3,000.
I'm stressed, but I'm trying to manage the situation with a happy-go-lucky attitude. The day my tension hits the roof, I'll meet the same fate as what happened at the village.
He's in the process of selling his prized assets, 2 bullocks that will fetch $600 at the market. The money will give him enough to plough just half his field, a job that will now have to be done manually.
I've mortgaged my farm to the grocers in return for a year's food ration at home. If I get a good crop this year, and if I get good market prices for it, if I make a profit, then I can pay off my debt. That's what I'm hoping.
So we see here these farmers still trying to plough the land and make another season, another crop. How much longer can they do this for?
The future is very dark.
Kishore Tiwari is a community leader who's been fighting for farmers' rights for more than a decade. His pessimism is well-founded. Cotton prices are at a 2-year low, thanks in part to a bumper crop in the US, where farmers are propped up by yearly subsidies of $2.5 billion.
This is the main complaint of the developing countries against the US government and other Western governments, even the government of against the government of Australia also. They are giving a lot of subsidies to their farmers. For them, it is easier. In our country, the number is such a large that we cannot.
The government provides small subsidies to farmers and compensation packages to families of those who've suicided. But corrupt officials have been accused of siphoning off money meant for those most in need. Harish Rawat says the allocation of funds is a state responsibility.
This financial package is given to the state governments. It is for the state government to implement the package, and they can get it implemented through the financial institutions. They can get it used by their state official machinery, and in some areas NGO are also interested with this job.
Ramdas Kishan Dale's father says he's received no money, nor has any bureaucrat bothered to visit them.
I had just one son. He has died. My grief is so deep that I can't even think of anything right now. I do not even know what we should ask from the government. Still, I would say that farmers should get a good and correct selling rate for our cotton, so that the situation that has befallen us can be prevented. If the government determines good rates, then this position, where my son killed himself, would not have happened.
But the government has no intention of regulating prices. Economic development demands the opposite, even in markets distorted by developed world subsidies. 60% of Indians work in agriculture, and they're bearing the brunt of India's economic transformation. 250,000 farmers have committed suicide, Many millions more now eke out an existence in city slums. In Vidarbha, signs of desertion dot the landscape. Fields are left untended as the remnants of last year's crop wilt in the summer sun.
At India's National Weather Centre in New Delhi, meteorologist S.E. Barn tracks the monsoon, the annual rainfall which starts in June and ends in September. This year's monsoon is weak. It's rained 20% less than usual, and some states have barely seen any rain at all, sparking fears of drought.
The highest deficiency in western and northern parts of the country. Particularly if we discuss about Punjab, Haryana, western parts of Rajasthan and Gujarat. There the deficiency is ranging from about 60% to 70%. It's a huge deficiency in those areas.
In the northern state of Haryana, the lack of rain is hitting farmers like Rameshwar Dayal hard. He can't plant his summer crops. Like more than half the country's farmers, he has no irrigation system and depends on the monsoon rains. Without them, his fields are little more than dust.
There has been no rainfall, so we've not been able to farm, and I've not sown any seeds. The water from the stream is too low, and without water, you can't grow anything.
Farmer Saroj Singh's family are also watching their land dry up, and along with it, their income. A mother of two, she's struggling to make ends meet.
We're always thinking, this time will rain. Surely it will rain this time, and we will be able to plant our seeds. It's so frustrating. We can't pay our household expenses and the government don't help.
Two-thirds of India's 1.2 billion population relies on agriculture for income, and the sector accounts for nearly a fifth of GDP. Government experts say it's likely some crop production will decline this year, although they're not yet raising the alarm.
For some crop, there will be decline in output, like coarse cereal, like pulses, like groundnut, like cotton. But overall, of the agriculture sector, we feel that in the worst scenario, the output will stagnate at same level at which it was last year.
Even if agricultural output only stagnates, it's still bad news in a country where economic growth is slowing down. Many Indians fear a repeat of 2009, when the worst drought in nearly 4 decades saw food prices soar and inflation go up, making survival for the poor an even more challenging balancing act.
For many years, India's agricultural sector has declined and the outcome of agriculture has been decreased. So you cannot always blame the bad weather conditions and the quality of seeds used for cultivation. Also, government has taken no proper initiative. So if there is no initiative, how are we supposed to be tackling the problem, and how is a probable solution going to come out of it?
See, India is a country that is highly dependent on the monsoon rains for its crops, and therefore it's highly vulnerable to crop failures. And in the past few years, it has not received quite the rainfall it should have, and therefore places like Tamil Nadu, West Bengal and Bihar have suffered famines in the latter half of the 1990s.
So I'll first run through these slides, then I'll start the discussion, like what's the need and what in fact is entrepreneurship. So this is the presentation which I have taken from incubation center, like in IIT Kanpur. They have this concept where they encourage students to come up with their own startup, and they really like they go for, there is a format which I'll explain the later part of my presentation, where they encourage for writing a business plan, and they help them, and initially they fund them for a certain period. It's called incubation. So this is a presentation taken from that, where you can see a cartoon, right? What does that display? Anybody? Yeah? Group of managers or perspective, like the entrepreneurs view problems as opportunity and challenges. So this is how an entrepreneur